Don't wanna sin no more. Hey, yeah. 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 Say captivity is stressful. Captivity is stressful now. Yeah. Say captivity is stressful. Yeah. Captivity is stressful. Yeah. Say captivity is stressful. I don't wanna lose my mind. I don't wanna lose my mind. Say captivity is stressful. I don't wanna lose my mind.
Shalom, Israel. Most High in Christ bless. Most High in Christ bless you. My name is Sister Anitra, and I'm an associate broker with First United Realty. And today I want to do a homeownership workshop just to give you some tips on getting prepared for homeownership, some tips on credit, savings, your budget, and then what to expect once you're ready to start buying. Next slide. Okay, some of the things we're going to go over, like I said, was credit, your budget and savings, what to look for in a lender, working with a realtor, and components of a GAR contract. A GAR contract is a sales contract that you will actually complete in order to purchase property, and then the closing process. Next slide. So as many as 65 million people lack a credit score. Sometimes we think that having no credit is okay, as long as it's not bad. But actually, no credit can equate to bad credit, because what they're trying to prove is that you have credit worthiness. So if you don't have any credit, you haven't been paying any, they're not been reporting to the agencies or anything like that, you have no proof that you're able to sustain credit. And that's just how they look at things. So, and lack a credit score or have a history that drags their credit score down. So, and things like this that drag your credit score down. So when you go to apply for credit, you actually pay a higher cost for things. Like, so if you go buy a car, instead of getting the prime interest rate, you're going to be paying a higher interest rate. So you actually pay more for having bad credit. Your FICO score, now they're rolling out a program for people who have no credit. They're doing this for 15 million Americans, and I have some more information on that. Basically, what they're trying to do is to get people more conscious about their credit. And you know, sometimes Israel, we have a bad relationship with our credit. We just have that is just the way we think about credit. We don't think about it. So in order to get ready to purchase things like cars and homes and things like that, we have to start thinking about our credit and forming a better relationship and improving our credit scores. Next slide. Did you go? I think you skipped one. Back one. Okay. So what is FICO? That's your credit score. It's from the Fair Isaac Corporation is where it gets its name. Payment history. These are things that affect your credit score and at what percentages. So your payment history, how you pay your bills. Are you paying them on time? Are you paying them late? That's the number one thing that affects your FICO credit score. Your debt amounts owed. So they look at what your debt to income ratio, if you're maxed out on credit cards and you're paying the minimum balance, that's going to decrease your credit score. The age of credit history, so how long you've had something unpaid that you're not paying on. So that affects your credit as well. Also, new credit inquiries. So every time you go and you apply for credit, whether it be a credit card, car, home, whatever it is that somebody looks and tries to find out if you're credit worthy, that affects your credit score as well. And then mixed accounts of types of credit. So if you have credit all over the place. You got student loans, you got credit cards, car loans, house, all those things are called mixed of accounts. So they affect your credit as well. Next slide. So these are average hits to your credit score. So if you're 30 days late, your credit score could be affected 40 to 110 points. 90 days late, 70 to 135 points. If you have a short sale on your credit report, and which we'll talk about short sales later, 85 to 100 points. Foreclosure, or you did a deed in lieu of foreclosure, which is the same as foreclosure. They try to tell you it's different, but it's not. 100 to 150 points. And bankruptcy, 130 to 240 points. Next slide, please. Okay, so how did your credit score compare to others? An excellent, we see, is from 700 to 749. Good is 700 to 749. Fair, poor, bad is below 600. Sorry. You see 1 out of 1,300 people have a, I'm sorry, I messed up. It's supposed to say above 800. Typo. And then 1 out of 8 have low between 500 and 600. So you can see there's a drastic gap between excellent and bad. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are some of the things that affect your credit score. Bankruptcies, we talked about that, charge-off accounts. So charge-off is when a creditor, you haven't paid them, and after so long, they know that they're not going to get their money, so they charge it off. And it stays on your credit report for 7 years. Closed accounts, a lot of people will tell you, you know, if you have a credit card and you're not using, close it. If the credit card is not charging you an annual fee, keep that credit card open, because you never know when you might need it, and it would affect your credit score negatively to close it. So if they're not charging you an annual fee, just leave it open. It's not hurting you. Inquiries affect your credit score. So anytime, like I said, a creditor looks into your credit for loans or even to see if you have accounts that might be, you know, like if you have an open credit card, other credit card companies will look at your credit to see if you're credit worthy to get more credit. So those can hit your credit report as well, affect your score. Judgments, if somebody's taking you to court on a particular matter, that'll hit your credit report. Late payments, tax liens, if you have joint accounts with someone, even though you might be a co-signer and authorized user. So if somebody's an authorized user on your credit card, even if you never applied for the actual credit card, you just using it, it still affects your credit. Even if you're just the authorized user, because if that user, the one who actually applied for that credit, so even if that authorized user stops paying that bill, it affects you as that authorized user. So co-signer, even if you're the second person to sign on for that credit, if that person who actually the loan is for, if they stop paying it, it hits you. They come after the person who's co-signed. Next slide. So these are some recent credit things that have happened, some credit changes that have affected how they report things on your credit report. So as of June 15th, 2016's agencies have to report the name of the original creditor and the credit classification code for each account or item reported. They can no longer report debt that did not arise from a consumer contract or agreement to pay, including but not limited to certain fines, fees, tickets, and assessments. So if you got a ticket or something like that, they can no longer put those kind of things against your credit report. And then as of September 1st of 2016, Agencies must begin reporting a full file monthly, including accounts that are open, that are paid in the last 90 days, or that require deletion or correction. So in the past, if something's on your credit report that you know that shouldn't be there, say it's been on there longer than 7 years, you would manually have to go in and dispute that account. Now, they're supposed to be responsible for going in and deleting those kinds of things. And if there's a correction that needs to be made, if you've contacted a creditor and the amount is wrong, or you've actually paid it and it's still showing up, they're responsible for correcting those types of items. Next slide, please. Okay, here's some more credit changes as of September 15th. And this is a big one because a lot of people are hit with medical expenses now because we've got higher deductibles. We have more out-of-pocket expenses for health care. But in the past, if they didn't collect, immediately they send something to a credit agency and then it hits your credit report. Now, because of the fact there've been so many discrepancies when people go and have procedures and things done. Sometimes health insurance carriers make mistakes. Sometimes they deny stuff that shouldn't be denied. So you have an opportunity to appeal those things, but if they've already hit your credit report, they've affected your credit score. But now it's required that they wait 180 days before they report it to your credit score so that you have time to either dispute something or even set up a payment plan with that particular health insurance carrier or the hospital or the doctor's office or whatever. Okay, next slide. Okay, so on August 1st, 2008, a credit freeze bill for Georgia went into effect. And this just says you can pay to have your credit frozen. It's $3 per agency. And this cuts out people from inquiring, especially like if you're going through identity theft or have been affected that kind of way. To be able to freeze your credit report is ideal because you don't want anyone looking into your credit that you haven't authorized. So it actually has a possibility to raise your credit score about 25 points. Because basically to the credit agencies, you're looking like you're taking control of your credit. And by limiting those people that can access your credit, shows the credit agency that you're doing so, and then you could possibly get 25 points for doing so. Here is the website and the phone numbers if you wanted to contact any of these agencies. I don't know if anybody needs time to write that down, or I can definitely come back to that. Did anybody need time? Is everybody good? Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Okay, so if you freeze your credit report, is that something that is only for a time, or is that period?
It's until you thaw it.
Okay.
So it's on there for when you pay that $3 or $9 for all three agencies. And it's free for if you've been a victim of credit theft and also if you're 65 and older. But you have to then call them and thaw it out as well. Right. So once they freeze it, it's frozen until you thaw it.
And that freeze is going to stop people from being able to check your credit.
Absolutely.
The things that you do and things that transpire will still be on there, but it's just basically for people that like to run your credit.
Right. They will not be able to make soft inquiries, which we'll talk about soft inquiries when people are trying to solicit you for credit. It'll stop that, as well as anybody trying to make an inquiry against your credit or anything like that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Ceases the activity. Yes. Next slide, please. Oh, another question? Sure, sir.
So if we went to go get credit, we'd have to.
That's not on.
So if we went to go get credit, we'd have to call the agency first.
You would have to thaw it out.
Okay.
Because once it's frozen, nobody can make any inquiries to your credit. So if you go apply for new credit, you would have to thaw it at that time.
Is that an instant process, or
it's an instant process? I think it takes 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions before I move on? Sure.
Those are the only two stipulations where you can freeze your credit? The being 65 or older or victim of credit theft?
Oh, no, no, no.
You gotta,
Oh, wait a minute. They want you to stand up. Sorry, sis.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Hello?
It's not on. Oh,
Shalom. The question was it those the only two stipulations to freeze your credit, being 65 or older or a victim of credit theft?
no, that's just where it's free. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you go back to the back of the slide, please? Yeah, it's free to those people. Anybody can freeze their credit, though. Anybody. It's just a free of charge for anyone 65 or older or victims of credit theft. Okay. Otherwise, it's $3 per agency. Oh, can you get it? Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So, credit for buying a home. It says a survey from Loan Depot, which is an independent lender. They say the fear of rejection is what's holding most people back as far as purchasing a home or even inquiring about purchasing a home. And 27% of all these wannabe buyers are afraid that they won't get approved. But the first thing is finding out where you are. So that would be contacting a lender and finding out what your credit is, where you stand. They can even give you ways to start increasing your credit score. So you might not be able to buy that day, or within the next 6 months, but they can give you a process to go about increasing your credit score and things you might need to do to get that done. And then that means 88% have put their dream of owning a home on pause just from the fear of not going and just finding out what your status is. Next slide, please. Okay, so credit lenders look at several different things when they want to qualify you for a loan. One thing is called residential mortgage tight credit, and it's just credit tightness. They're just looking, since the real estate boom, before everything happened with the foreclosures and everything, they were giving away money. Basically, I mean, you didn't even have to have a job basically to get a loan. I mean, because they had what you call no credit loans or paperless loans. So all you had to do was go in and say you owned a company and this is how much you made. They didn't verify anything, nothing. And that's what caused a lot of the market boom. And plus, they were qualifying people based on these no interest loans. So for the first year or the first 2 years, they would guarantee you would only have to pay principal. And so your mortgage could be like $500 for a $200,000 home. But in 2 years, they didn't tell you that the interest was going to kick in, and that $500 was now going to be $1,500. And you only budgeted for that $500. And that's why so many things have come into play now as far as getting people qualified and why lenders are very strict, because they had to actually pay the federal government for doing this. So they had to pay like $3 or $4 per $1,000 that they had lended out that they had to foreclose on. So they had to pay back the federal government, and they didn't like that. And I know a lot of you know that a lot of mortgage lenders went out of business. A lot of people that I worked with when I initially came into real estate, they are now out of business. You guys might remember some names like Countrywide, Home Bank, all these kind of places that just totally went bankrupt. So what they're looking for now, they have a very strict form of underwriting with their mortgage loans. So they require conservative appraisals. And what you'll find when you're searching for a home, even if you find a good deal, you like, I know this house is $50,000 less than the rest of the houses that are selling. When they get that appraisal, lenders now, they don't care if it's under market. They just want to know that it'll approve for the price that they're selling it for, or that you write the contract for. So when your realtor goes in, write that contract, and they submit it to your lender, they just want to know that it will sell for that price. They don't care how much over or well, they care about under, but they don't care how much over, because back before the mortgage crisis, people were finding homes that were under market, and then they would finance for what's above market. So say you found a house for $100,000 and it appraised for 120, you would take that loan out for that 120 and pocket that 20,000. So they don't do that anymore. Now they just want to know that it appraised for what that contract is for. And so you'll know that that house is still under market, but their appraisal is not going to show that. So they're looking at conservative appraisals, and they have to have thorough documentation. They want your home as collateral, because they want to know, especially in Georgia. Georgia is what we call a non-foreclosure state. So basically, if you miss one payment, they can take your house. One. Now, do they typically do that? No. But they can. Now that lenders are being more thorough as far as advising consumers that when they go into the closing process, this is what can happen to your home, because they weren't doing that. But Georgia, it's called a non-judicial state. So that means they don't have to take you to court to take your house. They just tell you miss one payment, and they can start the foreclosure procedure. So, and then they want any questions regarding title. And we'll talk a little bit about title. Title just shows that your property is free and clear for you. That means nobody else has any entitlement to your property. So once you go under contract, the real estate attorneys will run a title search, and they'll make sure that it's clear and free for you to close, meaning that there's nobody else laying claim to this property. And another thing that lenders are looking at is credit control. These are just other procedures that are put in place for judging your credit worthiness. Next slide, please. And credit overlays. This is something that they've really they're really enforcing now, and especially if you have a credit score that's not ideal. So say you have, FHA will allow for a 580 credit score, but lenders have their own protocol. So they'll say, yeah, FHA might give you 580, but we're not going to go below 620. And they are entitled to do things like that. Or they could not go approve anybody below 640. But they could have different programs that require overlays. And that means, okay, we'll do it at 580, but you have to have, there's certain things that underwriting, because when you write the contract and everything, your loan goes under what they call underwriting, and that's where they see if your credit matches everything that their mortgage is requiring. So they might have you do different things like if you have defaults, they might, like if you had a prime, let me get it together, credit score like 620, they won't require certain things. Like you might have been late within 12 months on a credit card or something. But if your credit score is like a 580, then they say, okay, well, you need 12 months where you've paid everything completely on time. So they add these kind of different restrictions, the more they have to take a risk on you. So next slide, please. Another thing of credit overlay examples are they have higher credit score requirements. they make you contribute more. Like FHA only requires 3.5% down. But if you have a lower credit score, they might require you to put 5% down. Or they might require that, you not be able to use certain gift funds, and we'll talk about gift funds as well later. And they might require higher reserves. Reserves are what you have in your bank account every month that you're not touching. So if you had a mortgage for $1,000, usually they require about $2,000 in your bank when you apply for that mortgage, because they want to know that you have at least 2 mortgage payments in the bank, so that in case anything comes about, you can cover that mortgage. Next slide. So budgeting. What's in your budget? Budget is mainly what you have coming in versus what you have going out. Money that comes in is your wages, overtime, bonus, child support, investment income, supplemental security income, retirement income. And here we see the money that goes out. Home expenses, utilities, food, family, obligations, health, medical, transportation. And one thing we don't do is look at what's coming in versus what's going out and creating an effective budget. One thing we can do to help us budget is like when you get a pay increase, instead of increasing your lifestyle to that budget increase, to that payroll increase, because you've already been making it on what you already have, take that increase and then turn that into savings. And then that helps you not only build your reserves, but it helps you save for that home. So next slide, please. So here's a budgeting action plan, because we don't plan to fail, we fail to plan. In setting a budgeting goal, you want a short-term and long-term financial goal. So if you know that you're not ready to buy a house now, you just know you don't have the money in the bank, your credit isn't where it needs to be, then you need to create a plan to get you there. So you might not be able to buy for another 2 years, but that's fine as long as you're working towards a goal to get there. So you have short-term and long-term financial goals, like paying off debt or down payment for a home. So you want to include the dollar amount and the time it's going to take you to do this. You're going to set your budget, choose a percentage of your net income, which is 3, 5, or 10%. It's up to you. It depends on how fast you want to get there. And then you might want to set up a separate savings account, because sometimes it's difficult when we have the money in the bank and we see it, then we want to spend it, or we think we have it. But if you're putting it somewhere separate where you're not seeing it every day in your bank account, it's easier to save it because it's something that you actually put away. You want to begin to pay off debt and save, and as you pay out the debt, the money will be freed up to increase your savings. And then this final step is just to stick to it. And that's the thing, we have to have that stick-to-itness to get things done. Once you start a budget plan, make sure that, even if something comes along like an emergency that you have to use the money, make sure that you put it back as fast as possible. Some ways as far as creating a budget, especially like to pay off credit cards. People have multiple credit cards. You want to take the highest interest rate card first and start paying it off, and then just pay the minimum on the other credit cards. And once you get that high interest rate card paid off, then you double it over to the next credit card and pay that off, and then continue paying the minimum on the other ones until you get each credit card paid off. Yes, ma'am. You look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of the income, the last slide,
Mm-hmm.
can you gift income? Like if, like for my kids, one of them is ready to buy a house, but the income is not quite there. can you gift income?
You can't
Instead of-
gift income. You can gift a down payment for a house. But listen close, because loan officers are looking very close. Mortgage companies are looking very close at bank accounts now, because that was one of the things that was involved in the mortgage crisis, is they not paying attention to that kind of stuff. If you're giving someone income, that means that 6 months from now, what if you can't give them that income? They can't pay that mortgage, and then the mortgage company is out.
So if you've made provisions, for your kids for, home buying or whatever, college, the money is best put in their account as far as like
Put in the savings.
In the savings, and it needs to be there for a certain amount of time, and it should be, depending on their credit score, a certain percentage depending on the down payment that's going to be required.
Right. Well, predominantly it's going to be a FHA, and that's going to be 3.5% of
Okay.
whatever amount of house they're trying to buy.
Okay. And then the other thing is court-ordered income, is that considered, do the banks consider that
Yes.
steady income?
Child support, yes.
And even, how about lawsuit,
Yep.
they consider that income? Okay.
Because we're going to look at what things like student loans and how they calculate that as well going forward.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay. And then, we were talking about saving. Another way to think of saving too, because a lot of us have cars, a lot of us have car notes. You might be a year out, you might be able to pay off your car in a year. What you need to do once you pay that car off is continue taking that car note out and put it in a savings, because you were able to afford that car on what you make now. So continue to take that car note out and put it towards a saving. That can go towards your down payment, that can go towards your reserves in order to purchase a home. Next slide, please. So here's some more tips for budgeting and savings. You might want to ask your employer to deduct a set amount from your paycheck each pay period and deposit it into a savings account automatically. That way you don't see the money, because it's a problem when you see that money. You want to spend it. But if you don't see it, it's more apt you're not going to touch it. Put unexpected money into your savings account. So say you get a bonus. It's a bonus. You weren't expecting it, but you got it. So put it away. You don't have to spend it. You could actually put it towards, you could actually save it. And then when you're ready to buy that house, that money is there and it's increasing. Like I was saying about salary increases, you are already surviving on what you currently made. So if you get a salary increase, put it away. Tax refunds, put them away. Rebates, overtime pay, income from hobbies, yard sales, things like that. People have yard sales all the time, but we automatically get the money and then we want to spend it. But we should think about saving, especially if we're preparing to buy a home and things like that. If you dip into your savings for an emergency, just consider it a loan to yourself and then set a repayment schedule back to yourself. And then you want to prioritize what debt to pay off first. Like I was saying, high interest credit cards, you want to pay them off first and then move on to the lower interest rate cards as you pay each credit card off. Next slide, please. Okay, as far as settling accounts, these are for maybe if you had an emergency procedure or you had to go to the hospital and you have some medical debt that's coming up, or for anything. You want to build a relationship with your creditors. I know when they call, we have to try not to get emotional, and that's my other point, is because they're just doing their job. They're just doing their job. They're in collections, and that's what they signed up to do, and that's what they're going to do. But in saying that, there's certain things that they cannot do when trying to collect the debt. And that goes with the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. It's a federal law that regulates the activities of a debt collector. So under this law, they cannot harass, oppress, or abuse you. They must cease certain contracts and communications when requested to do so. So if you tell them, don't call me at this number, this is my work phone, or don't call me at this number anymore for whatever reason, they have to stop calling you. And they must identify themselves, and they cannot misrepresent themselves. So they can't say that they're calling on behalf, because credit agencies are separate from the actual original creditor, so they can't say they're calling from that original creditor's office when they're actually calling from a credit agency. They can contact consumers generally only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. local time of the consumer, and they must send to the consumer a written notice within 5 days after first contact, advising the consumer of the amount of money owed, the name of the creditor to whom owed, and a notice of rights. So your rights under this act should be included in that letter. And they may not communicate with anyone other than the attorney if the consumer is represented by one. So if you have an attorney, they can't talk to anybody, and they can't talk to anybody anyway but you. So if your wife answers the phone or your husband answers the phone, and they can't speak to that person on your behalf, they have to speak directly to you. And so make them validate the debt. So they're calling from an agency. They're not the original creditor. So they may have it wrong. They might have contacted the wrong person. You make them validate that debt. And before calling your creditor, you make payment arrangements. Before making payment arrangements, you make sure you have enough money to negotiate with. So if you know you can afford $25 a week to pay a debt, that gives you more of a negotiating stance when they call, because they just want some money, because right now they're not collecting anything. So if they can get $25 a week, they'll more than likely take that. So the power of negotiation lies within your ability not to get emotional, so you don't want to cuss them out. I know sometimes it's hard, because they can be very aggressive at times, but, just stay calm and not get emotional, and stay, because what they want to do, all they want to do is negotiate. And the more that you are willing to negotiate, the happier they are and the happier you'll be. And the rights I just read to you under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And another thing, you want to document. You want to make sure you write down everything, who you spoke to, what time you spoke to them, everything, because if ever a situation comes about, your documentation is binding in a court of law. You can take your journal or whatever you've been keeping and show the judge, look, I've tried to do this, and they still, we'd even agreed on a payment plan, and they put my account in collections, which they cannot do that. If they agree to a payment plan, then they can't still put you in collections. Next document. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the process of getting ready to buy a home. And basically, these are the fundamental steps that you will be going through. You're going to attend a home buyer workshop, which you're doing now. It's always a good idea to get all the information that you can before you start the process. So you're going to get pre-approved with a lender, meet with a realtor, you're going to shop for a home, go through the financing process, and then closing. And then at closing, that's where they give you your keys. Next slide, please. So getting pre-approved, you're going to find a lender. Sometimes we bank with people that we trust. You might want to go through your bank if you have a relationship with them. Sometimes your realtor can refer people that they've worked with that have been able to, get things done and that they trust. Other times it might be word of mouth from a friend that has used a certain lender. And then after that, the next thing you're going to do is make an application. The lender will email you an application, or you go into their office and you can fill the application out, either way. And basically, they're just going to want the necessary documentation, which is your paycheck stubs, your bank statements. Sometimes they might require income tax returns, things like that, just to so that they have an idea of where you stand, so that they can put all the calculations together, take you through underwriting. Once they get all your financial information, they're going to take you through an underwriting process. And that's where the underwriter goes in and they look at what their company, their guidelines are, opposed to what you actually submitted. And then they bounce you out a price of what you are probably able to afford at that time. And then that's when your loan officer will send you a letter of approval. Usually email you a letter of approval. Congratulations, this is what you're approved for. And then you're ready to start shopping. Next slide, please. So right now, there's only 4 loan types. Now, this is a drastic change before the mortgage crisis, because before the mortgage crisis, we could cover all my slides with all the loan products that they had, because they were non-interest loans, no documentation loans, all kind of low interest, no interest. But now there's only 4 types of loans. You got FHA loan, which most first-time home buyers, that's what you're going to qualify for. And that requires a 3.5% down payment. Now, with down payment, there are down payment assistance programs. Some of them are more stringent than others. And we can talk about those as we meet and you're ready to start purchasing. But nowadays, mortgage companies want to know you have some skin in the game, and they want you to pay that 3.5%. Although a lot of them are working with a lot of down payment assistance. You have things like Invest Atlanta, which they came out with because people worked in Atlanta, wanted to live in Atlanta, but it was too expensive. So if you're a police officer and you work in the city of Atlanta and you trying to buy in Atlanta, that was next to impossible. Now with Invest Atlanta programs and stuff like that, they make it more feasible for if you wanted to buy in those particular areas. Conventional, that's usually for well, not really investors, but people that aren't first-time home buyers. So what dictates a first-time home buyer would be not just a person who's never owned a home, but even if you've owned a home, but you had to go into a rental situation, but as long as you haven't owned in 3 years, you're considered a first-time home buyer. So conventional is usually for people who make a ton of money and they can afford the 5%, and usually there's benefits to going conventional. VA loans, if you've been ever in the military, you can qualify for a VA loan, and there's no down payment. That is the only product out there now that requires no down payment. And USDA loans, which those are usually for farmers. So those are basically the only loan products that are on the market right now. Next slide, please. Oh, question. Yes, sir.
All right. Can people that are ex-military, can they co-sign for people that are not?
You can be on a mortgage with someone, yes, but the person, that doesn't mean that they're going to get 100% financing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's according to you. Like if you were the person who got the loan, yes.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as they wouldn't be able to get the same loan product as you know.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I wanted to bring up something about student loans. I forgot to cover that when we were going over credit and getting qualified. But this is another thing that lenders look at as well. A lot of us have student loans. I might be speaking for myself, but when you're in a deferment, especially when you're first coming out of college, and people warn your children, when they go to college, they attack. And I didn't know this because I was first generation college student, So I didn't have, a parent to tell me, when you go to college, don't take those credit cards out. That is not free money. That is not money for you to go shopping with. And you're looking at them like you're standing at the table and they're like, here, apply. And you're like, I can get a credit card. Y'all know I ain't got a job, right? Y'all know I have no way of paying this back, but I can have a credit card. Yes, they give your students credit cards because the concept is this. They know that once they get out of college, they're going to buy a house. They're going to buy a car. They're going to need an apartment or someplace to stay. And if they want those things to happen, they're going to have to clear up that bad credit that they established in college. So please warn your students. As far as student loans, people are like, well, I got a loan in deferment, so should that count towards my loan or income? Yes, it does. And one thing you want to know about student loans is that they survive you. So once you die, your family is responsible for your student loans. Yes. Alert. FYI, yes.
So the only way that you can be free of a student loan is pay it.
Pay it. That's
Okay.
it.
And
Or don't get in it.
and then you can contact them to have it taken off your credit report.
For if after you've paid it, yes, it should come off your credit report. But if it's it shouldn't be a bad debt, because basically with student loans, they're just going to hang around on your credit report anyway until you're done paying them.
Yeah, because my wife's got a student loan, and it's like, I don't know. You want to tell them the situation? Because it's like they keep selling it, and we can't contact the person that we need to so we can settle it. So we're trying to. It's like every time she reaches out to them,
They've sold it to somebody else.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you got to try to find a number for whoever is showing up on that credit report. You have to try to contact those people and find out what you need, what steps you need to go to resolving that. Yeah. Yes.
I am a first-year student, and when I applied for the student loan, it immediately dropped my credit score. Do you know? It blew my mind. I'm like, what happened to my credit score? It took it down like really drastically.
Yeah. That's because that's a hard inquiry on your credit report.
There's nothing to do
unfortunately.
about it. Like,
Just pay the
it'll
loan.
be there.
Yeah, it's gonna.
Okay.
Well, as you go to school, and it's in deferment, right? Or no? Are you paying on it?
No, I don't owe anything. That's the whole thing. I'm a first-year student, so I'm still in school.
Okay, so it's in
So-
deferment.
Okay.
It's what they call deferment.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically they're deferring your payments until you graduate or whatever. Yeah, but
Okay.
you're in deferment right now. So if you were looking at buy a home, they're going to take 2% of what you currently owe and try to calculate a payment that you would have once you graduate.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to look at that, even though it's in deferment, they're going to look at that as your debt to income ratio. They're going to
Okay.
put that in there
Okay.
as debt.
When I looked at my credit, I was like, why is this on here yet? I don't owe anything yet.
Right.
But I understand now.
That,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes. Okay. Next slide, please. So when you start working with a real estate professional, all right, they call this real estate sales, which it is not sales at all, because if anything, it's soft sales, because there's nothing I can sell you on. There is no house I can take you in and you not like it and make you buy it. There's nothing in the world I can say. Nothing. I can tell you the floor is made of gold, and you'll be like, but that kitchen's small. There's nothing, absolutely nothing I can tell you. So we are consultants. Basically, what we do is consult you. We consult you on price. We consult you on location, size, things like that. If it's a good deal in that neighborhood. Those are the kind of things that we do as agents. We help you pre-select homes in the price range that you select, because even if you get approved for $200,000, you might not want a $200,000 home, a $200,000 home. Everybody does not max out their credit. What they're able to qualify for. So you might be qualified for 200. You might only want to spend 150. It's our job to find you that house that you want at that price. We schedule appointments for you to see homes. Even when the borrowers are not there, we give current selling prices for homes, similar to the ones that you're looking at. Next slide. Basically, what we do is find comparative properties in that neighborhood and see if you're actually getting a good deal, because it's not a science. I mean, it's close to a science. It's a practice. So we use many different factors to determine what is a good price, and that's location, school districts, things like that push home prices and things. So we get you up-to-date information about taxes, school districts, conditions in the area. We handle negotiations over price in terms of your offer, and we arrange for home inspections, and we facilitate the buying process from the time you make contract until you close on that house. Did somebody have a question? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard somebody. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what you want to look for in a real estate agent? You want to make sure they have experience and real estate education, because once a realtor takes a test, that's not it. Real estate is like law. It's a practice. You constantly are learning because things are constantly changing. Laws are changing, practices are changing. So you want to make sure that they know what's going on. You want to make sure that they're patient, honest, trustworthy, because you're going to be sharing a lot of personal information with that person, and you want to make sure that that person is not sharing that information with companies or anybody else you might know. You want to make sure they have full access to the multiple listing service. Multiple listing is just where buyers and sellers go to look for properties. Sellers list their properties on these services, and then buyers in turn are given access to it by their realtors, and they're able to look at this information so that they can buy a home. The ability to understand your wants and needs. Like I said, you might be qualified for $200,000. You don't want somebody pushing you to, if you only want to get a house for $150,000. You want to make sure that that person understands you. Willingness to keep you informed of changes in the market by educating you of things that might be going on, like we just had a tax increase. Not a tax increase, but an interest rate increase. So interest rates went up. Taxes are going up. I don't know if you guys have seen recently on the news, some people's taxes have gone up 150%, which, if you have a realtor, that person can also help you appeal those kinds of things, because I've done it for numerous clients. You go in, you have to present information of what's going on in the neighborhood, because even though things weren't appraising for as much as they used to, they were still trying to implement taxes on us that reflected a market that did not exist. So after things went into foreclosure, you expect your taxes to go down because your property value has now gone down. So, but they weren't doing that unless you appealed it. And to appeal that is a process. You want to make sure you get with somebody that can give you some comps in the area, because you can take that information into the appeal process and say, look, these houses are only selling for this amount. How are you going to impose these kind of taxes on me? So those are kind of things that you want to be informed of that are going on in the market. And you don't want somebody, like I said, being pushy. Next slide, please. So what your realtor wants to know from you, they want to know, are you motivated? I mean, because everybody wants to own a house. I could poll everybody in here and nobody would say, yeah, I want to rent for the rest of my life. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to own a house. But are you motivated to take the steps to do so? So are you able, meaning are you qualified? Have you talked to a lender? Have you gotten that pre-approval? Because in real estate, we don't just window shop. I mean, you want to make sure, because the time you spend window shopping, somebody done bought that house that you were looking for. So you need to, especially now, because the market is increasing. I mean, there's more buyers in the market. Houses are selling at higher prices. What kind of home interests you? We need to know what do you prefer in a home? Do you want a fenced backyard? Do you want a large kitchen? Do you want what kind of rooms? Things, we want you to describe the actual house that you want or you see yourself living in. Next slide, please. Okay, so after you've selected a property, you see a property, you like, Anitra, this is it. This is where I want to live. This is my house right here. What we're going to do as realtors is run a tax history report. We're going to look at that and see what that person actually paid for that house, if they took out a second mortgage on that house, because these are all things that go into your negotiating. This is how you're going to know it, what if that house is priced properly. We're going to look at a comparative analysis report, which is what houses have been selling for in that area that are exactly like the house that you're looking at. And if those houses have been selling for $100,000 and this person has their house listed for $150,000, then we know that their realtor is crazy, because that does not go along with how the market is growing. And we'll even show you the percentage at what percentage houses are selling, because we'll have information as far as what it was listed for in the MLS opposed to what it sold for. So that's your margin of error as to what you can negotiate with, because every realtor knows if they've got a listing, they've done a comparative market analysis with their seller, and they know that what houses are actually selling for. So you want to discuss your most negotiable and least negotiable factors. So if price is your thing, so if you come down on price, then you probably should be able to either close early or do something to justify you offering that lower price for that house. Whatever kind of negotiate, whatever like a closing date. Right now, we're looking at 45 days minimum. I mean, there's been new regulations that have been implemented into the mortgage process that have slowed things drastically. I mean, we used to be able to get things closed 30 days. Now we're looking at anywhere to 45 days and more. So you want to know if a foreclosure or short sale property, you might be interested in only foreclosures. Now, a big misconception with foreclosures is people think, oh, it's a foreclosure, so I'm gonna go in there and it's listed at $100,000. I'm gonna offer them like 80. It don't work. It does not work, because basically what banks have done, they've done an exhaustive process of pricing that home, and once they put something on the market, they're not gonna go up and down with you, because one, in this market right now, people are getting multiple offers. So they know if you don't buy it at what they listed for, somebody else will. And so then you want to discuss fees associated with the writing and acceptance of an offer. Next slide, please. So some of the fees that go along with preparing to buy a home is your earnest money. Earnest money is upfront money that you pay to the seller. It doesn't actually go to the seller. It goes to the real estate attorneys, and they hold it until the end. But it comes back to you as long as you don't default on the contract. If you default in any way, then it's considered damages to the seller, because they've actually had to take their home off the market. They've took that risk by accepting your contract, but this is the remedy for that in case things don't go through. So earnest money is usually 1% to 2% of the purchase price. So if you have a house worth $100,000, then you probably pay anywhere between $500 to $1,000 in earnest money you would offer. And like I said, at the end, at the close, that money comes back to you. It either goes towards any outstanding closing costs or whatever that you have at the end. And if there's nothing, then you get it. The closing attorneys write you a check at the end. Appraisal fees. Appraisal fees are usually implemented by the mortgage company.
What's escrow, and like what does it do to help you when you purchase in a house?
Well, escrow is nothing more than the monies that you have to put into a house, like for your taxes, your interest, all that stuff is calculated by the mortgage company at the end. So that's all escrow is. The stuff that they hold, what they call holding in escrow, is money for your taxes. Like now that basically what the mortgage lender will do is take last year's assessment of your taxes on the house, on whatever they paid, the seller paid, and then they'll divide it by 12 and come up with what's going to be added to your mortgage payment each month, so at the end of that assessment, when the bill comes due for your taxes, they pay that money directly for you. And they hold it for you. Yes. I'm sorry, I can't.
Is that the bank that holds the money?
Yes, your mortgage. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Your bank, the bank. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
Every month they accumulate a certain amount on taxes, and then they put it's included in your mortgage payment. So your mortgage payment has certain components. You have your principal, which is if you had to pay no interest on the house, that's exactly what you would pay. But because of interest, you usually end up paying about double what what you actually owe on the house. But taxes is included. So you got your taxes, principal, and interest, and that's your escrow. That's what they take out every month for your mortgage. That's including your mortgage payment. Did that answer your question? Okay. So appraisal fees. Your mortgage company will either collect those when you apply for the loan, and after you find a house, they send an appraiser out and get an appraisal. It's usually anywhere between $300 to $450. That is money that you will have to pay up front, or a mortgage lender may let you pay it at closing costs. Like if we negotiate with the seller that they're going to pay X amount of dollars for closing costs, it can possibly go towards your closing costs at the end. Home inspection. Now, this is that's also can be negotiated to be paid at closing, but don't count on it because most inspectors want their money right when they do the home inspection. So once you make the contract, you have what is called a due diligence period, and that period is somewhere between 10 and 12 days where you inspect the house, you do all your inspections, and you pay that fee to your inspector, and then after that time, if you feel like, yes, this is the house for me, you've negotiated repairs and everything, then we move forward.
Who chooses the inspector?
You do.
Okay.
You choose the inspector. You can get referrals from your realtor. You can get referrals from somebody that you know. You might know an inspector that you want to use. It's all up to you. You can definitely ask for referrals from somebody that your realtor's already used. It has done a good job in the past. Termite inspection is another inspection that you might want to get, because the saying in Georgia is there's houses that have termites and there's houses that will get termites. So you want to make sure that you get some kind of termite inspection on that house, because you never know, especially in Georgia. Georgia is heavily targeted with the termites, and because we have all these beautiful trees here. And then radon. A lot of people don't know about radon. Does anybody know about radon? Yeah, a lot of people. It's common in Georgia because of Stone Mountain, actually. Radon is a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas that could affect your lungs. It actually contributes to lung cancer. And it's a gas that runs off the rocks, actually more so after it rains, like days like this. It's more prominent. Now, there's levels that can be dangerous, and then there's just levels that are normal. But it's definitely a test that's becoming more predominant in Georgia because of the fact that, people have reported a lot of cases of radon poisoning and stuff like that because of Stone Mountain, things like that. We have a lot of rocks, and it comes off of the rocks. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are just some factors that go along with the real estate contract. On your real estate contract there's a section for a property description, purchase price, your earnest money. So whatever earnest money you're going to, you decide that you want to offer, there's a slot for that. And then closing costs. Usually with buyers, you want the seller to pay the closing costs, because usually the realtor that has listed that home for sale has already talked to that seller and said, look, buyers are going to expect for you to pay those closing costs, period. So you want to make sure that you definitely negotiate as much closing costs as you possibly can, so that when you as a buyer, all you have to come up with is your down payment, nothing more. And even your down payment goes towards any closing costs that you might have to pay or anything like that. So your closing date and your possession date, because sometimes people close, I want to close on the 20th, but I'm not going to take possession of the property until the end of the month or something like that. So there's different sections of the contract. You select your closing attorney. Usually closing is called the buyer's closing, because the buyer is usually the one who's doing all the signing. They choose who they want to close with, or closing attorneys, because their lender is actually the one who's going to be speaking back and forth with your closing attorneys. Inspection and due diligence contingencies. These are things that have to be met before you can move forward. So when you do your due diligence, you're going to do an inspection. During that time, you're going to, like I said, you're going to go through, get all your inspections, your termite, your home inspection, make sure that there's no defects or anything like that in the property. You're going to make sure that you don't have any mold or anything like that. These are all part of getting your inspections done. And then once that contingency over, then you have another contingency you go into, is your appraisal contingency. And you want that to always be more time than your due diligence. You want to give yourself time to get your inspections done, and you want to give yourself, the mortgage lender, an opportunity to get your appraisal done, and a time to negotiate if that appraisal does not meet the price of the home. So if you're purchasing a house for $100,000 and your appraisal only comes in for $90,000, then you're going to have to go back and negotiate with that seller and, like, look, your house didn't appraise. Either you're going to lower the price or we're out. And this is what contingencies do. They give you an out clause. So if you go through the inspection and they won't repair certain things, you're out. If your appraisal doesn't meet its requirements, you can get out. If financing, then you have another contingency, which is the financing contingency. So if they get all the appraisal and everything in, and your mortgage lender says, they might put a credit overlay on there. You need to come up with, another $2,000. And if you can't, then that means you didn't qualify, and you can get out of the contract as well. And there's no penalty. Thank you. There's no penalty or any consequence towards you. So
I got a question. Sorry.
Yes.
So when that happens, right? Does the seller still get the earnest money deposit?
No. As long as you get out during your contingency periods, you get your earnest money back. So that's why you want to make sure, and your financing contingency should be the longest. It should be like 25 days or so into the contract, because it's going to take time for you to get your inspections done, the mortgage lender to get your appraisal done, and then to get everything to underwriting and try to get an approval. So if they don't get an approval, she has a question. If they don't get an approval, then you're able to get out free and clear with your earnest money.
I'm sorry. Okay, so the same child I was talking about buying a house. An option that we were looking at is like a fixer-upper, something like that. And so in terms of like what he's approved for, would they allow, like, say if he's approved for $100,000 and you're able to find a fixer-upper for $80,000, that $20,000, would he still be able to get the $100,000 to put the $20,000 into fixing up?
It depends on the mortgage company, and some it's only a select amount of mortgage companies that do the FHA rehab loans. So you would definitely have to make sure that that particular lender does that. But yes, there are rehab loans still out there.
Okay.
Yes. And then lead-based paint disclosure. Nowadays, there's not many homes that have lead-based paint. Anything built prior to 1978, they require that you have a lead-based paint disclosure. So typically, they do them anyway. They have you sign. It's just a part of the GAR contract right now, the Georgia real estate contract. Next slide, please. Okay, so now you're under contract. Once you've got your inspections complete, you've got the appraisal complete, it's called what you're officially under contract. You've done your due diligence. Your lender will provide you with a truth in lending disclosure and a good faith estimate. Now, there has been many changes with this now, because basically during the mortgage crisis, it was said that the reason that a lot of buyers were misled is because of the wording and because of, different things that mortgage lenders were doing, and they weren't engaging the consumer enough to let them know of the deceptive practices that were going on. So now we have what is called it's TRID. It's called TRID, but it's TILA RESPA Integrated Disclosure. And basically, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, they implemented laws to make it more easier for you to read your truth in lending statement, to understand it, and they have to have these disclosures in at a certain time, or they could be fined. They have to have things signed at certain times. I mean, it's a lot of deadlines, and that's why we have went from a 30-day close to 45 plus days to get a house closed because of all the federal guidelines and stuff that they've implemented, which is great for the consumer, but it just takes a longer process. Okay. Then 3 days prior to closing, we do a final walkthrough. We want to make sure nobody is broken into the home. We want to make sure the home looks exactly like it did when you made contract. And if it doesn't, then those things have to be remedied. Then you and your agent, you go to the closing attorney's office, and that's after everything has been done. You've got your funding, they've wired it to the real estate attorneys, and you're ready to close. Next slide, please. And I like this picture, especially for buyers, because that's exactly how heavy that pen feels, because it's called a buyer's closing, and they are going to have like a packet about this thick for you to sign every single document, and you must sign it exactly the same, and you must not put an initial where you didn't put an initial on the contract. Everything has to be pristine. I mean, it has to be perfect. Next slide, please. So, and these are just some types of properties that are on the market. Right now, new construction is making a comeback since, more prices have started increasing and more buyers are in the market. At first they took a halt. They took a stop as to what, they were building because of the mortgage crisis. There were no buyers. Everybody was buying foreclosures, short sales. Nobody wanted to buy new construction. So you saw a lot of subdivisions that were stubbed out. They would have houses up front, and then they'd be stubbed out in the back where houses were supposed to go, but they didn't have the funding to complete it. So now it's making a comeback, of course. Resales is just where a seller has listed their property on the market, and they're looking for a buyer to buy it. Foreclosures is where banks have taken over a property because somebody didn't pay, and they've went through the legal procedures, and now what banks do is they get appraisals, they get all kinds of inspections done on property. So they know if a property is a fixer-upper, they know what needs to be done because they've done all the inspections. They can tell you everything that needs to be done in that house. If it needs flooring, whatever, sometimes they might go ahead and put flooring in or paint or something like that. Sometimes they don't. It just depends. HUD homes. HUD is FHA foreclosures. So basically what HUD does, they have their own separate website. They also list on the multiple listing service, but there's a lot of HUD program. Well, there's a good HUD program out there called Good Neighbor Next Door. And if you're a teacher, a police officer, or a medical worker, like a nurse, you can get a house up to 50% discount, a 50% discount on a HUD foreclosure. So there's not a lot out there. I mean, the inventory isn't huge, but they're out there. And it's a great opportunity for somebody that's in those professions. Short sales are similar to foreclosures. They don't affect your credit score as much as we saw, but they do affect your credit score. And basically what a short sale is a bank is getting ready to foreclose on somebody. But that person, that particular seller, they contacted a realtor and they said, look, we're going to try to sell this house before they foreclose. And the bank has offered to give a discount on the sale of that home. So if your house is $100,000 market, usually they'll go down about 20 to 25% on the price of that house so that you can get it sold and it doesn't have to go into foreclosure, because like I said, banks are charged $3 to $4 per dollar that they go into foreclosure. So if they're being charged for that money, it's in their best interest to get the house sold before they have to foreclose on it. And then lease purchases, of course, where you can go into a house and basically you're in a renting situation, but some of that money is going towards your purchase. So you're actually just leasing the house until you come up to an opportunity to buy the house. So you might lease purchase for a year or 2 years, and that's an opportunity for you to get your credit together and everything so that you can get financed for that house. Next slide, sorry.
We got a question.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Hey, shalom, sis.
Shalom.
Do they have tax houses?
Do they have what?
Tax houses, like houses that they just have to pay the taxes.
Oh, you're talking about houses where you can go in and pay just taxes and own that house?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they have tax liens, yeah. They do have those, and you have to do a lot of legwork to get those.
Do you do those?
Yeah. I have not done one before. I have friends that have done them, but it's a long process. I mean, and it's a very competitive process as well. Right. But yeah, it can get done.
All right, thank you, sis.
No problem. Yes. Next slide.
Got another question.
Uh-huh.
With those tax liens, I've heard that if you purchase one, that the owner could they have a time period.
They do.
That they can come back.
I think it's it might be 30 or 60 days in Georgia. Yeah, they have a time period that they can come back and pay those taxes off, and then so they don't even give you clear title until that time period is over.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right, understood.
Any other questions? This is just some slides of some multiple listings of what you would get once you start shopping. This is a new construction home. Next slide. And it just gives you, details and stuff on, things about the house. So this is where you get your first impression of the house before you actually go out to see it. Realtors typically post, if they're a good realtor, they'll post at least the maximum amount of pictures that are allowed in the MLS so that you get an idea as to what the house looks like and what's in the house. So they give you a description, they tell you what's in the house, and then you decide from there if it meets your price, it meets your what you want in a house, you see the pictures, then we set up an appointment to go. That's a resale. Next slide. I don't know what's up in the corner. What does it say in the red up there? Foreclosure. Okay, so this is a foreclosed property. And no different than a regular property. They just, a resale. They just give you the same information. Usually they don't give you as much information because sometimes these realtors get these houses from banks and they don't. I mean, they'll go and see the house one time, maybe take 1 or 2 pictures, and then they're done because they're doing multiple foreclosure listings. So they don't put a lot of time and effort in it. But next slide. And this is the HUD website. You would go here, and this is what a listing would looks like. It gives you a case number. These are also in the multiple listing service, and in the multiple listing service, they'll give you the case number as well, so that you can come back on this site and get different information, because they'll give you. HUD actually does inspections. They do appraisals and stuff like that. So they let you know like where their houses stand. So that's another good thing about buying HUD as well. But it's very competitive. They always get multiple offers. Always, always, always. And you just have to do your best price up front in order for them to select their offer, because they're looking at what's going to net them the most, period. And sometimes you have, even though their houses are listed below market, they're 9 times out of 10 you have to offer more than what they're offering in order to win the bid, because you're basically bidding against other buyers in the market. Next slide, please. And I don't know what that says. What does that say? Does it say anything up in the red over there? Oh, I can't see. Okay. I think this is just another listing that I pulled up. Next slide. And this is a lease example of a lease purchase. Same difference. It's just different things I'm just showing you that are in the market. Next slide. And that's the end. If anybody has any questions. Yes. To buy. Right. You're basically renting. You're renting the property, but a portion of it you can negotiate a portion to go towards the buying of the house. Like if you're trying to, because basically in a lease purchase, you're trying to get to the financing process. You're trying to get to the process of getting a mortgage, because that's the whole thing. So when you're negotiating your lease purchase, you want to tell the seller, this amount is going to go towards the purchase of my house, so that you're actually building up a down payment for that house that you're going to get financed while you're working on your credit and everything.
Another question. From what you showed in the second to last slide, the short sale would be pretty much the best possible or the easiest way to go as far as owning a home?
Well, short sale is it can be a very long process. It's gotten shorter. Short sales, they could take up to a year to get done. But now the process has gotten more streamlined. So now it's not as long of a process. I mean, you can probably get a short sale done anywhere between 90 days to 180 days. But it is just a longer process because of all the things you have to get done. As far as once you make an offer to a short sale, they have to accept the offer, then they have to contact their investors, they have to see if it can get approved, and then sometimes they say, no, the investor won't take that amount, but they'll take this amount, and then then the process just starts over. So it can be tedious, but I mean, it's definitely an option, a good option as far as buying a home.
Hold on. I think his hand came up first. I just wanted to know, I got one more year in college, and I was thinking about purchasing a home. How would my student loans play when I'm trying to purchase a home? Would it be with the credit?
I'm going to read you exactly what the lender is going to tell you.
Okay.
Deferred student loans. It says for mortgage financing, you will need to provide a letter from the creditor identifying what the estimated monthly payments will be, as the lender will use the estimated monthly payment and determine if it fits the requirements. So if that particular debt knocks you out of your debt to income ratio, like it just totally knocks you out of the financing process, then they won't even consider it. So they're going to look at what you owe. They're going to call your creditor, whoever holds your student loan at the time, and they're going to break it down at 2% of what you would actually, they're going to take 2% of the whole amount of what you owe and divide it by 12. So you could be looking at, even though if you don't end up owing that much, like, because sometimes they give you a grace period where you can pay like, $100 or $200, but the mortgage company is going to look at your total of what you owe.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yes, they've gotten very strict with student loans. It didn't used to be that way at all.
Oh, shalom, sister.
Shalom.
Could you go back to the slide where it talks about the short sale?
Sure.
Thanks.
I don't remember which one that was. What are you talking about here? Oh, what the credit score affect, or is that what you were looking for?
I think it's like the second or third slide.
Oh, okay. It was like where the credit, we were talking about the credit score, how it affects the credit score. He said. You got it. Okay. We got it. Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
Hi, shalom, sis.
Shalom.
With homestead exemptions, familiar?
Mm-hmm.
What is the area, the max area you can do to find comps for that price to get your homestead when you want to contest it?
When you want, what do you mean? You want to contest the tax rate?
The tax that they...
Or you're saying you want to contest, you want to appeal the tax, your
Correct.
taxes?
Like
okay.
previous year, 1,500, this year, 2,500.
Gotcha.
So, like, I know property hasn't really gone up that much. I want to appeal the process. I just want to know how far of a area outside of my subdivision can I go to find, say,
find comps.
like properties, like size. So
Probably either a mile to a mile and a half.
Mile and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question about the lease purchase. What are the requirements to get approved for that?
It's usually the same requirements as renting a house.
Okay.
So they're going to look at, it depends on really who you rent from, because private sellers probably are less stringent than property management companies, because property management companies, they want full background histories and things like that. But usually they're going to look at your credit score, they're going to look at your income and stuff like that. But it would be the same process as renting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I also have another one about the FHA loan for the, I think you said it was like 3.5%.
3.5.
Now, is that easier to get qualified for than the regular? I would say easier than what are the requirements, if you know?
Yeah, as far as getting qualified for the FHA?
Approved, yeah.
Well, it's all dependent on, you mean as far as credit score?
Everything.
Okay, so with credit score, it all depends on that lender. Like the threshold for FHA is 580. That's across the board. That's what FHA by itself requires. That's minimum.
Mm-hmm.
But different lenders will imply different thresholds as far as what they accept as a minimum credit score. And most of them are looking at 620 right now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the information that's on the internet obviously is wrong, because they say, well, you did talk about it earlier. They will even take people under 4. That's what I saw when I did the research. People with credit scores like 480, 520. So yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that.
If they do something like that, I'm telling you, you would pay so much more money for that loan. It would be ridiculous.
So the best bet, say your credit score is 620, 580, whatever, but even though they say 3.5, but the best thing to me, I would say probably going in with like at least 10 or 20, to put down to cover everything that way you have to worry about, is there anything may arise, like, issues with the foundation of the house or plumbing or things of that sort.
So you're saying putting more down on the house?
Like, I wouldn't go in with just 3.5. Is it best to go with like more, maybe?
If you have extra down payment, you should probably put that aside into a savings account or something, just like you said, just in case something does go wrong with the house. I mean, if you want to invest that kind of money, but I'm going to tell you, PMI insurance, which we didn't talk about, But if you're putting down less than 20%, you're going to have to pay PMI. So regardless, you're going to have to pay that. So I wouldn't even, if I had extra money to put down, I would put it into a reserve account just in case something happens to the house, or just in case you might lose your job next week and you might need that money to cover your mortgage until you find a job. So I wouldn't look at putting so much down because it's not going to affect your payment that much. Your payment for every $1,000 is probably like $7. Every $1,000, extra $1,000 that you pay is just $7 on your principal. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sis, I was talking to you the other day about the credit thing. I found out I've been working on my credit, but last year I changed my name to my Israelite name. There's a brother, Officer Palu in Oklahoma, that he been helping me fix my credit. But what I noticed when I changed my name is everything that was under my old name, then they're not transfer them to my new name. So now my old name, my credit was like 5 something. The other day I checked my new name, it's like 685.
Yeah. To me, I said that's like the Most High giving us a do-over. So
Yeah.
change your name,
Yep.
like the scriptures say.
Yep. So when I called Officer Palu, I was like, hey, what's going on? So he was explaining to me. So I thought I had to call and change. He said, no, leave it alone. So he was saying, everything you got in your name, in your credit, whatever you got, the company have to call and report it.
Yes.
Now that these companies don't know my new name, they cannot call.
They cannot. They
cannot call. So now, as of right now, my credit goes up because of the new name. Mm-hmm. So it's like a do-over. For example, when I used under the old name, when I used to apply for credit card, when they turned me down, they used to send me letters saying, okay, I turned you down because of you got this in your credit, you got that in your credit.
Yes.
I just got a letter. The reason I apply for a credit card, the reason they don't give it to me now, they say because I don't have enough credit.
Established, yes.
Enough credit established.
Yes, you have no credit. Yes.
But I have a score.
Yeah. So now you need to build your credit worthiness because now they're going to look and say, okay, yeah, you got this score, but what is, you haven't showed us that you can apply for credit and pay for credit.
Oh, please.
And basically, with credit cards, this is a strategy to use to build up your credit. Is to, when you get a credit card, you might want to, max out, not max it out, excuse me. You want to put like maybe 50% of the balance on there. So let's say you have a credit card for $200. You might want to buy some gas, pay a bill to get up to that 100, and then pay the minimum payment for about 3 to 4 months, and guarantee they will call you and they will try to increase your limit, and it builds your credit because basically they want to know that you can take out credit and that you can pay it back. But if you just use it and then pay it right off, that's not saying to them that you need them, right? Exactly. And they want to know that you need this credit card and you need your credit, so they're going to give you more credit. It seems asinine and backwards, but this is what they want to prove, that you're going to use it and then pay it back a little bit at a time. Yeah, it is a trap. But we look at APR. If you think about annual percentage rate. So say you had a card that was 20% annual percentage rate. That's just 20 or 24 annual interest rate. That's just 2% per month. They're only charging you 2% interest per month because that's 24 is the annual percentage rate. That's what you're going to pay annually. But every month it's just you're just paying 2%. Don't pay it off. Yes. Don't go over 30 to 50%. Right. You don't want to go over that, and then pay it off a little bit at a time because they just want to know that you use it and then you pay it back over time. Of the credit card balance, whatever balance you have. Yeah.
And then another thing with the lending, can you double up on programs like the FSH plus a HUD?
Yep.
And do they look at, is it the same?
What
as
you
like
say,
when-
double up on what now?
Like programs, like, well, FSH isn't really a program, but can you have a FSH loan and get into a
or
HUD
purchase
home?
a HUD home? Yeah.
And then is it the same like when you're renting, that the income to debt ratio, or your income 33%? Are they
Yes,
looking at
about-
that same 33?
Yeah, they're looking at anywhere from 33 to 40. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Shalom, sis.
Shalom.
I don't know if it would be for you or for Deke, but I just did, I got a loan forgiveness. And like my credit was real bad. It's not, well, it's still bad. It's 587. So I know it's a 587, but I did a loan forgiveness and that took me up to the 587 because before I was way worse than that. I know that I want to change my name and that's something that I'm going to be doing soon. But then I heard you say about freezing the credit. So if I freeze it with the $9 for all three of them, that could possibly take me up about 40, and that'll take me to at least about 620 to where I'm probably good with most agencies. So would it be in my better interest? Because again, I'm going to change the name regardless. But when he changed his name, it reflected positively and it went up. So does that necessarily mean like if you got bad stuff, it stays with the old name? Does any good stuff, meaning the $42,000 that was paid with the loan forgiveness, do I benefit from that or do I just lose it?
No, once you change your name, then all new
good
you're
or
gonna
bad?
you're gonna
Okay.
establish new credit under that name.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
anything that the agencies have already reported under your old name, if they haven't reported anything in your new name, it doesn't count towards your new name.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Basically,
you.
no problem.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I was asking Deacon. Maybe Deacon can explain on that because I thought that your Social Security number would be linked to your credit as well, but right, who reports it? Who's reporting it? Yeah, so if they don't know your new name, they would have to know your new name and then redo that file and update it with your new name. But how would they know your new name? They're not. But why would they run your social? They already have it as a delinquent account. Mm-hmm.
He wanted to do. Go ahead.
Shalom, sis.
Shalom.
I was just wondering, like Deacon was saying, his credit score went up when he changed their name, and in reference to what you were saying about the Social Security number, do you know if they actually give a new Social Security number with the new name?
Your
So
Social Security number never changes.
So it stays the same.
Yes, that's your brand.
So, now, I have heard that you can get a second Social Security number, so that's...
Well, maybe under identity theft situation or something like that, maybe. But I've never heard of anyone getting another Social Security number.
Shalom, sis.
Shalom.
This whole name changing thing, I'm just curious. Obviously, debt that you have on your old name, obviously with the 7-year, it'll roll off. How about debts like student loans? Will this affect, I'm talking about long term now. Will this affect, generations after? Even though your name is changed and you've passed and all that, but your children and children's children, will this affect your old debt? Will affect them?
Well, you're talking about your student loans and stuff like that.
Yeah, any debt
applying
that's
to
not
your
right. Any
your
debt
children?
that's not that you can't run away from. Basically,
Yeah. What they're saying about student loans is they survive you, so they could possibly go to your children.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but
I
that's
figured
the
out.
only thing that I can really think of that survives your dying. Once you die, usually your debt dies with you.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Also, your school loan is the only thing the government can attack within your retirement age. So generally, if after you're retired, they cannot touch your Social Security, but they can touch your Social Security to get to pay your school loans. Your school loan, after you're retired, debtors cannot go after your Social Security. After you retire and you still have school loans, they can attack your Social Security to pay off your federal school loans. That's the only thing that can be attacked after your retirement age.
Yeah, yeah. Student loans are vicious these days, seriously. Yes, and if your children do not have to get them, do not put them in that situation. It is a horrible situation.
How long does the short sale stay? Is it 7 years?
It does stay 7 years, just as long as a foreclosure.
Okay.
I thought I put that up there. But yeah, the short sale gives you less of an impact on your credit score, but it does stay on there, just like a foreclosure.
Sis, right here.
Yes, sure.
I just want to know what's a good method when you get a credit card to rise up the score without going over the limit? Because I heard if you go 70% over that limit that you pay, it lowers your credit score.
Yeah, you don't want to max it, definitely. When you're shopping for a credit card, you want to make sure that, one, it has no annual fee.
Right.
If you're trying to establish credit, you want an unsecured credit card, and you don't want to max it out. You the officer was saying, you
why unsecured?
Why
unsecured?
Because if it's secured, you're just securing it with your own money.
Okay.
So it's really, I mean, you still have an impact on your credit score, but not as much as you would an unsecured credit card. And then you don't want to max it out. You want to use a balance, and then you want to pay it off over time, pay it off over some months.
So like with 10% do it?
10%, 15, yeah, anywhere from 10 to 30.
Okay.
Even maybe you could even go up to 50, but you might not want to go up that high.
Nah.
Just make sure that you're paying it off on time every month.
Okay, thank you, sis.
No problem. Any other question? Oh, no question.
Do you have any good inspectors to recommend? From my experience, Georgia's shady, real shady.
Georgia is very shady, and I have an experience. When I first moved here, I was trying to get a basement finished, and a guy came out. He actually worked on a subdivision. Had references and everything, and came in. We paid him a third of the work. He did a third of the work. We paid him for a third. He worked a third, and we gave him the 2/3, and he never came back. So, especially during the time that I was buying, that's when the mortgage boom and everything, and everybody. It was so hard to find a contractor. But nowadays, those kind of scammers a lot of them have gotten out of the market, but they do still exist. But yeah, I do have inspectors that I work with regularly.
Okay, all right. I'm just kind of shady to deal. I'm concerned to dealing with inspectors that are affiliated with a lot of these lenders. Because when I bought, I had so many problems with the house. You couldn't even walk down the hallway with making sounds. Why would you sell a house?
You definitely don't want to get I don't know many inspectors that are. They're usually independent of the lenders. Well, you might be talking about
the agent, I guess.
Oh, okay.
It just seemed like they had a little, network, and it's all about everybody passing off so they can make the sale.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and there's plenty of people out there, yes. But, that's why they tell you, especially with your realtor, if your realtor suggests them, they should suggest at least 3 inspectors for you to choose from.
Okay.
And then you always want to make sure that person is certified and that they're keeping their education credits and stuff like that up.
Okay.
Because home inspectors are not regulated by the government. Like, they don't have to have a license. They just have to have the education.
Damn.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your time, Israel. Thank you.
Oh.
Say captivity is stressful. Captivity is stressful now.
Shalom, Israel. I'm Elder Nathaniel of Israel United in Christ. YouTube likes to shut our channels down, as some of you have noticed, ever so often. Subscribing to join IUIC will assure you will always stay connected to our YouTube accounts. We want to do our best to make sure this truth gets out. Please click and join our subscriber YouTube channel called Join IUIC to stay linked to all of our videos. So again, please make sure you subscribe to this Join IUIC channel to get your latest updates from all our YouTube channels. Shalom.